Okay, so again, thanks for popping into this brief intro, Learning Objective 3. Actually, everything about Learning Objective 3 you've already done in Learning Objective 1 and 2 with all your analysis. Learning Objective 3 simply introduces you to something called the journal. The journal is really the very first place information is entered. In other words, it's really how accounting starts physically by putting it down. But as you saw from Objective 1 and 2, look how much thinking and analysis we had to do before we could actually get to this point. And a journal is just writing it down. As you'll see, it's really just sort of that simple. All that analysis you thought of, you're simply writing it down. And that's basically going to be the focus of today. Once you learn about the journal, when I see you next time, we're going to find out what happened to these numbers, which they travel over to something called a general ledger. But today is just about the journal. So you had, in this particular diagram, you had spent all of your time analyzing transactions. So the next stop here is, now that you've done with that, we're going to be putting it in the journal. So this is where kind of we stop today. When I see you next time, we'll pick up from there. Okay. All right. So a journal basically has everything recorded in a chronological order. So as they're happening, as transactions are happening, they're being recorded as they're happening. And so you'll just see definitely a chronological order to it by date is usually how it's organized. Okay. And it's simply a complete list of all the transactions and the effects of those transactions on the accounts. And it's relatively simple to understand. When we actually are entering information in the journal, that's called journalizing. So you're going to hear the word journalizing, but that's simply you putting information in the journal. The information we're going to start with is from our wonderful Sierra Corporation that we've been working with. Remember, on the 1st of October, they issued common stock in exchange for cash. We analyzed that. We had more cash, more common stock. Right. That's how it all started. Then October the 1st, later that day, they borrowed money from a bank. So they had more cash, and now they had a note payable. That's how we got started. And then on the 2nd of October, they purchased equipment for cash. We had more equipment and less cash. So these transactions you've seen, now you're going to learn how we journalize them. So again, we issued common stock for cash. We analyzed it. We said we had more cash. We know that when we say we have more cash, cash increases on the left side of its account. And so we debit cash by 10,000. We had more common stock. Common stock increases on the right side of its account. So we would credit common stock 10,000. That's all the analysis that we had to do. This is what it looks like in the journal. We start with the date of the transaction. You're going to have a column for the date. You'll have a column for the accounts. Okay, one line for each account. Some journals have a reference sheet, some don't. Don't have to worry about that. But you will see two other columns on the far right side, the debit column and the credit column. And that makes sense because if you think about a regular account, and I'm going to draw over this is what an account would look like, right? An account has two sides on it, a debit side and a credit side. So in the journal, it sort of looks like it would on any account. The thing is that these are where the numbers would go. So these are where the accounts are affected. We list the accounts, and then this is where the numbers would go. Notice that the very first column the numbers go is the debit column. And so the very first account that's listed is the account where the debit is going. So here we said cash would get the debit. So we list cash account title, and the debit of 10,000 gets written in the journal. Common stock is that second account that's affected. It's affected on its credit side. Notice the credit column is the second column. So the credits would be listed secondly, right? Secondary. So here you'll notice this is what a journal would look like. A debit to cash, credit to common stock for 10,000. You've already figured it out in all the analysis in the journal. You're simply just writing it down. That's it. There's really not much else to it. For that next event, when they borrowed 5,000 by signing a note payable, we did a lot of analysis on that. I say we had more cash. We know more cash is a debit to cash. We had more notes payable. We know more notes payable is a credit to notes payable. That's all the analysis. Now we put it in the journal, the date, the accounts that are affected. The first account that's listed is always going to be the one that's affected on its debit side first. And then you notice there's an indenture on the second line to show that that account's going to be affected on its credit side. And that's all we're doing. You did all the hard work here. All the analysis in learning objective 1 and 2 was the hard work. This particular objective is simply writing it down in the journal. That's it. It's really all it is. On the 2nd of October, we purchased equipment for $5,000. We analyzed this. We said, okay, we had we had less cash. So less cash, it happens on the credit side of the cash account. We had more equipment. More equipment happens on the debit side of the equipment account. When we do the journal, again, we are going to list the accounts in the order in which the debit would go first and the credit would go second. So equipment would be the first account because that's the account that got debited by 5,000. Cash is that second account because it got credited by 5,000. So again, you did all the hard work in learning objective 1 and 2 by analyzing all this stuff. This is really just putting it down in the journal. Okay. This is what a journal, and if you print it out, it's really long for most cases. It'll list every single transaction, again, by date, the accounts that are listed. The first account's always affected on the debit side. The second account's always going to be affected on its credit side, and it's just listed that way. That's how it's organized. Okay. And that's basically all I wanted to go through with you today. The do it exercise is on journal entries. It's on Kate Brown's Beauty Salon. The name of the salon is Hair It Is Incorporated. I must have gone to her competitor, Hair It Went, because I'm losing my hair. And so again, incorporated means a corporation. So you shouldn't be surprised that the very first thing that you see is common stock is issued in exchange for cash. This is how corporations start all the time. So here you have more cash, we have more common stock. How would you put it in a journal? Well, exactly as it sounds, a debit to cash, credit to common stock. That's it. That's all we would do. The second transaction here, we purchased $4,800 of equipment on account, means we got to pay it later. So we certainly have more equipment, but because we have to pay this in 30 days, we have more accounts payable. So how would we think about that? The equipment side, debit side of the equipment account would be affected. Accounts payable, the credit side of that account would be affected by this. So you simply write it down in the ledger as a debit to equipment for $4,800 rather, credit to accounts payable for $4,800. And the third event, they interviewed people. Again, when you interview, when you hire, when you talk about stuff, there's no financial transaction. And so there's no accounting that needs to be done. And that's basically what I wanted to review with you today. I figured I just wanted to break it up so you can understand that all the hard work was last week on the analysis. The journal is simply putting it down. This is on paper, but it's all computerized now, so that's wonderful. But that's all I wanted to, and that helps us kickstart the week quite well. And I thank you very much for popping in today. I'll take any questions you might have now.